Hello, everyone. Welcome. And we are going to get started with our career conversation.
All right. So hello and welcome to the Gerontological Society of America's career conversation. 75 years of building gerontology, where we were and where we are going. I'm your co-host, Dr. Juanita Donbashu, PhD, postdoctoral fellow with the Rural Dementia Action Research Team at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Liggis. I'm a doctoral student in Human Development and Family Sciences at the University of Connecticut, and I'll also be co-hosting today's session.
All right, and we also have Dr. Patty Slatum. Maybe we'll just give you a chance to introduce yourself as well.
So thank you. I'm Patty Slatum. I'm a visiting scholar at the GSA working on this career conversation series. So please share your feedback. We would greatly appreciate it as we continue to make more of these, and looking forward to today's conversation.
Perfect. So this career conversation will celebrate the GSA's 75th anniversary, where we'll showcase the expansive field of gerontology, the study of aging, by engaging in dialogue that is meaningful, timely, and relevant. This conversation will provide a discussion where GSA leaders in aging will share innovative strategies and ideas for those looking to build successful careers in gerontology.
And if you're interested in gerontology, we hope today's career conversation will connect you to the work conducted by members of the oldest and largest interdisciplinary organization dedicated to aging.
So GSA members work in all avenues of life, ranging from social workers to geriatricians. We all come together under the shared belief that learning from diverse areas is the best way to foster ingenuity, achieve the greatest outcomes, and learn from one another to support successful careers in aging.
For those of you who aren't familiar, GSA's career conversations provide a virtual forum to exchange ideas about issues and strategies for career development in gerontology. Through semi-structured interviews, panels like today, and discussions, career conversations bring together students, early and mid-career gerontologists, and experienced researchers and leaders in gerontology.
So before we get started, we'd like to highlight a few general guidelines. We will be monitoring the chat for audience questions, so please feel free to share and submit questions for our panel. We may not be able to address all of the questions today, but we will try to include as many as possible. Please remember to be respectful of others' opinions, and we want to emphasize that all points of view are welcomed in our conversation. And lastly, a note about our role as co-hosts. We are here to help guide and facilitate the discussion, ask questions, and learn together from the group. We look forward to an engaging and enlightening conversation.
Now we're going to open our conversation today by welcoming our three guests, Dr. Susan Reinhardt, Dr. Philip A. Rosario, and Dr. George Taffet. I would now like to invite each of our speakers to introduce themselves, and I'll call out as we go through. So I'd like each of you to please share your name, current position, and institution. And we'll start with Dr. Reinhardt.
Hello, everybody. You'll notice I wore the same jacket, so it's kind of funny that I did for my picture, which I don't wear that often. I am the Senior Vice President and Director of the AARP Public Policy Institute, where I also direct as Chief Strategist the Center to Champion Nursing in America and Family Caregiver Initiatives.
Thank you so much. Now, Dr. Rosario.
Hello, everyone. I'm Philip Rosario. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at the School of Social Work at the Delphi University. I'm also a professor at the school.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Dr. Taffet.
Hi, I'm George Taffet. I'm a geriatrician and cardiovascular researcher. I'm at Baylor College of Medicine, where I'm a professor and used to be the chief of geriatrics. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. So it's great to hear about our diverse panel and where everyone is joining us from. So now let's move on to our discussion segment where we'll pose questions for members of our panel to answer.
And today we'll get started on the theme. So our webinar today is focused on celebrating GSA's 75 years of building gerontology. We know you've all had successful careers focused on aging. So now we'd like to know, how did you get to where you are? And please feel free, anyone, to start the discussion.
Okay, well, since I was first up to introduce, I guess I'll just jump in. I was thinking 75 years, where you've been, where you're going. Well, I haven't been here 75 years yet. I've been in the field for a while. And, we all take our journeys, as they like to say. I really started as a visiting nurse. I consider myself a nurse sociologist now. My doctorate's in sociology, but my heart has been in nursing. I'm still a registered nurse. Actually, given injections in the last year, so definitely part of the nursing profession. But as a visiting nurse, you're a guest actually in people's homes. You knock on the door and they let you in, and you realize that you're only going to be there a little while. And so what can you do to support people? And generally there's a family member that's there. That has been my experience, which brought me into the field of family caregiving, which is such a big part of GSA. I know there's probably many on this call today that are interested in this, or maybe have experienced it themselves or think about it in the future. But through the years, I went into nursing faculty at Rutgers College of Nursing, for example, a couple of other organizations, and was very active in my state nurses association. So when we get into more conversations about networking, I found that to be really, really important. I was recruited. I got very active through that in policy, because as a visiting nurse, you start to realize that, taking care of people one at a time is certainly one very important way to go. But policy, you can cover more solutions for more people. So I started getting into that initially around payment policy, actually, and, went to different meetings and volunteered in different ways for changing policy. And then I became known and was recruited to be Deputy Commissioner of Health and Senior Services in New Jersey. Totally different than I ever expected to do. Became after that co-director of Rutgers Center for State Health Policy, and then was recruited to come to ARP, where I just said what I'm doing. So those are some of the shortcuts I'm giving you, but in a long career, I have to tell you that wasn't all planned. So, but that's where I am now.
I guess I'll go next. And I think I became a social worker also by chance. I was telling someone the story recently that I was actually very interested in botany and was thinking about that in high school. But I became a social worker because I started volunteering at a school for children with cerebral palsy, and really realized that I enjoyed working with people, and found that really satisfying. But over the years, what's happened was that I just, in my training, I had a bachelor's degree in social work, and then later on went on to get a master's in social work. But in the course of my training, realized that I really didn't want to work with children, nor did I want to work with adolescents. And so ended up working with older adults. By default, oh, it's like, okay, I can't work here and I can't work here. Where else could I work? So I ended up working in a residential setting for low income elders in Singapore, and got to know a whole group of older adults in the home on a very close and personal basis, partly because of the nature of the home, and that I was able to run reminiscence groups, and just realize that, like the assessment forms that we do on intake doesn't quite capture the full lives that people live, and really got then interested in, like, I needed to go and get my, get an advanced degree, and went on to do my master's after that, and specialized in gerontology, and became, really interested in various issues in gerontology, including, family caregiving, as well as just the well-being of older adults in later life. And, and then I got my first academic job in part because I wanted a job that, at Adelphi, because I wanted a job that was a nice balance between both just being able to do my scholarship, but also being able to take, where teaching was taken seriously. And, I did that, and I've been at Adelphi since 2002 upon my graduation from my PhD program. And I came into like administration by just because there was a need, not because I wanted to. And when people congratulate me on this promotion, I think it's more like a punishment, but I seem to be enjoying what I do. But and I'm happy to have the option, right, of being also able to go back to of my faculty line, should I so choose down the road. Thank you.
Okay, so I can give a long version or a short version. I think I'll give a short version. I've always liked old people. And when I was a medical student at Brown, there was one elective in older people. And it was with a guy by the name of Irving Beck, who was probably 85 when he and I would round at the Rhode Island Medical Center. The Rhode Island Medical Center was repurposed barracks from the Civil War, where the state of Rhode Island just warehoused all these old people. And the patients that we saw and the discussions that we had and the intellectual challenges that we faced were just so cool that I still actually talk about patients that I saw then, now 35 years later, when I'm making rounds in the hospital here. It was just such a great experience. It was such fertile ground. Any seed that got into that ground would have blossomed. And so after that, I, went to my residency in internal medicine, planning to focus on older people, planning to do geriatrics, and then started a geriatric fellowship. Initial work was on CPR outcomes. First presentation was at GSA, which is why I'm here today, because that was the best reinforcement of choices that I had ever made in my life. These people who had no idea who they were, no idea who I was, but I knew who they were, coming up to me and asking me subtle and important questions. Again, so reinforcing and fertilizer on that plant that was growing. I stayed with that as a career, actually realizing that I couldn't do human research on CPR because that involved living in the hospital 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. And my new wife was not very happy with that idea. So I went and became an animal scientist, translating from the clinical down to the animals. And I've been doing that ever since. So having one life in the clinical universe, the observations I make there, then taking back to the lab to create hypotheses that I can test, and sticking with that and asking those questions, and still doing it now. I'm not going to comment on the administrative stuff because I did it because I was forced to do it. And the second I could bail out of it, I did. But the other part, the teaching, the science, and the clinical interactions with the patients, there's nothing better.
Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. This discussion is really highlighting some important points, not only about networking and also learning about all your diverse educational opportunities, but also just the point about stepping outside of one's comfort zone. I'm hearing that a lot come across too. So now this year's title at the GSA conference is Disruption to Transformation, Aging in the New Normal. So what does the new normal mean for careers in gerontology?
I'm not sure we know what a new normal will be. I know we keep using that term, but I really don't understand it myself. Certainly COVID has changed the world. And I was just reading something today, I think it was in the New York Times. It was about public health professionals, maybe others read it, and how hard this has been for them. And that the public health field it's actually going to be less prepared for another pandemic than we were already, which was rather shocking. But because so many are leaving, and the dollars that are going into the system are temporary. They're not really being used to build the infrastructure of public health. I don't know how many public health folks we might have on the phone, but we all care about public health more than ever. We care about, I was a public health nurse for a little while too. So again, I don't know what new normal is going to look like. I think certainly it's given a lot of attention to older people, since they were the ones who were most at risk, continued to be at risk, although they're more likely to have vaccinations. But with Colin Powell dying today after being fully immunized, what a shock. It's just so upsetting. So I don't mean to be, such a downer, but I don't think we should worry too much about what the new normal will be. We always have to be ready for change. I mean, life is all about change. So how do you prepare yourself for change? How do you be flexible and adaptable and see opportunities where you make the best fit for what might be available, or create possibilities for your future? It seems to me. Certainly resilience. If there's ever been a term that I knew about that now it's like, really, I need to understand resilience more. That's the catchword, I think. Not just a word. That is what we need to understand, resilience.
Definitely, definitely. Dr. Rosario, anything to add?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. In terms of, I look at the past, like I keep saying past year, but I think it's been more than a year, because in part because I just seem to have a certain amnesia about the days that go by. But and I think the uncertainties of things become, maybe that is what the new normal is about. But also the fact that, I think what COVID-19 for me, what the pandemic has taught me is the fact that, or at the very least, not so much taught me, but made really visible, was the fact that, it's thrown a wrench in the way in which we think about how things should work, right? Because, and then just the whole idea of planning becomes even more challenging and difficult. But, this is going to be the second year in which GSA is going to be their annual scientific meeting will be online, and this, earlier on, George, you were talking about getting non-refundable tickets. I too have non-refundable tickets, right? And so, because I was certain that we were going to be in Arizona, in Phoenix, and I was like, things won't change, right? But the fact that I think it's really going to be hard to actually, for me to try to tell folks, if you're thinking about a career and all that, just expect for the fact that this is going to be challenging, right? The times are going to be somewhat different, but there are going to also be opportunities for you, opportunities that will be probably very different from the opportunities we've had, but just be prepared for the fact that it is going to be, it's going to be a lot of uncertainties and somewhat challenging when you think about, just the political times that we find ourselves in, and then also, in terms of funding, in terms of what's available, in terms of resources and all that. Yeah, thanks.
So I hate to do it while we're Zooming, but I've actually realized how difficult communication is, especially with older people, with this. I mean, I'm talking to a piece of plastic, and how you guys get in there is something that I don't understand, and how you get so small to be inside that piece of plastic. Just how technology, while it's facilitated stuff, has really changed a lot of the constructs of communication. I can't listen to people's hearts when I do a Zoom call on them. I actually would rather talk to them on the telephone rather than look at my computer screen, because at least I can just focus on their voice. I've never realized how important nonverbal communication is until I haven't had access to the nonverbal communication, the body attitude, the are their fingernails clean, all this sort of stuff that I never realized how important it was until it's gone. And honestly, I think a lot of that stuff has made me much worse at all the things I do, as opposed to making me much better. And I mean, maybe I'll be able to come up with a hybrid approach, but you know, I think you guys should realize that for the convenience in the facility, we're giving up a ton. If that's the new normal, if Zoom is the new normal, yeah,
Yeah,
going to be abnormal.
great. Thanks so much for sharing. So some great points kind of mentioned here. So just to recap, it seems like there's a real need for capacity building within healthcare. And I'm hearing a lot of challenges, but also opportunities, like Dr. Rosario mentioned, just opportunities, new opportunities in the workforce. And also Dr. Reinhardt mentioned a huge point. I love this point, the point about resiliency and adaptability and having that flexibility to be creative and look at ways to innovate, and kind of roll with the punch, I guess, right now during COVID and kind of work through it. So thanks so much for sharing.
And I guess I'm the non-resilient, non-flexible, non-adaptable model, and I'm embracing that at this particular time.
Well, and I think those are great points, though. That's, it's great to hear from a clinician perspective, too, though, of what's going on and the challenges that are being faced. We need to hear about those challenges in order to develop solutions. And so, thank you for bringing that to the forefront, definitely.
So, and even our lab meetings where we're only talking about science, it's still much better in person than it is over Zoom or the alternative.
The evidence around mental health is pretty compelling.
Yeah.
That at least for that population, and I have family members I have some that are clinicians and some that are getting mental health services, they really like it and feel that they don't have to travel, they get all nervous and who's going to see them and lots of things like that. And instead they can really get focused attention. So at least for some, it seems to be working.
Well, that's a really great point, and I hope to segue smoothly into our next question, which we sort of alluded to already about kind of suggestions for students or early career professionals. What kind of advice would you share for students or early career professionals in each of your different disciplines looking to build a successful career in gerontology? Maybe sharing some of your more detailed experience, sharing where you are now, but what kind of advice would you share with these students?
I think it's very interesting listening to all of us that we didn't have a whole plan. Right? Sort of starting off. I guess for me, having as many skills and background knowledge that you can possibly have. Nursing is one of those skills, social work, medicine. I mean, there's lots of things you can possibly do. So kind of a generalist, and then you start to specialize a little more, of course, and then you go deeper into areas that particularly call to you or that are available to you, I suppose. But in all of those, it's like people have to know. People have to know you can do these different things. So it does get down to being active in various ways. So I mentioned my professional nursing association for me was one way. There's certainly people at work, right? So if you're working with people, networking with them, but also not just in work. I really strongly encourage getting outside, getting to know people through this professional association, certainly GSA. You already heard how important that was for you, for one of our panelists here, but not just to join it, but to be active in it. So people joining this phone call, that makes sense. Join in, listen, try to get to meet some people. Chat is a good thing to do. People connect even on chat, which is another kind of good point about Zoom, I guess. At least you can get some word in edgewise here. And certainly mentorship, which I understand you already had a whole panel on mentorship. You can never say enough about mentorship, but I think you need mentors throughout your entire career and not just one of them, many different mentors for different things, but also to be a mentor. And you can be a mentor early on in your career, help as many as you can, and to be open to opportunities as they arise. I think I said earlier, sometimes you create opportunities. Is there some place that you can actually say, hey, how about this? But definitely to be open to them, which means you have to take risks. I remember there's a number of times in my career that I jumped you jump a boundary, going from education into policy, for example. And even within that, I had a number of promotions that were a little scary, and are you really ready for this? I don't believe in that fake it till you make it, but you're not going to be perfect in anything you do. So somebody used the term leap, take the leap. And it really stuck with me. This was a colleague of mine, actually was a former student, that, it's okay. You're probably not going to crash, you're not going to die. So take some leaps and have confidence in yourself. And, even if it doesn't work out, there'll be another leap that you can take. You're going to find a job. Anyone on this phone has enough background, education, credentials, you are going to survive. So don't worry about that. What you want to do is grow. So take that opportunity.
Yeah, I would concur with Susan on the, I think professional relationships are really important, and those relationships can be definitely in the form of having at least one good mentor. Don't stop at one, because when I look back at the opportunities that I had, some of the really great opportunities came about by having a mentor that actually looks out for me, and someone who help in terms of making that introduction, definitely also getting out of yourself and trying to, taking that risk as well is going to be important. The other thing that I think that's really cool, something that we need to do more of, if we've not already doing, is definitely networking. Networking with a lot of people. Just because I think that the part of the networking is really also getting to know people, but because I sometimes find that, the idea of networking can sometimes be a bit too instrumental in that sense, but I think there's going to be also treating people like people and getting to know them, as well as not just, thinking of them as an instrument or as an avenue to get farther in life, but also to really get to know them as people, and develop those friendships, right? The final thing I would say is definitely think about balance. I think that we sometimes really need to be able to find some level of balance where we're not spending too much time on any one thing, and then we are in that process forgetting ourselves. And I think sometimes it's going, especially now, it can be a bit more challenging finding that balance, because I tell people my commute now is from my kitchen to my dining table, which I currently use as my quote unquote office. But and that is not good enough in terms of the transitions that I need from work to home and from home to work. It cuts out a lot of travel time, but it also doesn't give me the time to find balance between work and life. So I have to find other ways to compartmentalize my work and to be able to set aside work from my home life, so that I don't get those two enmeshed. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I guess I want to harken on something that Susan said about opportunities. I think it's really important to like what you do and to find something that you really like to do. But I think you should be ready to do some stuff that you don't like when it comes up as an opportunity. So you can't be so focused.
Seems like we may be having some technical difficulties. We'll see if Dr. Taffet comes back.
Well, just while we're waiting, I did want to say, Philip, I really agree with you. I had written down, take care of yourself. I think that's what you were saying. I'm a big believer in sleep. It's like the number one thing you need to do. There's a lot of evidence around that. It's even related to diabetes. I mean, it's pretty fundamental. Your body has to refresh itself. So try to get some sleep and, do all the things for wellness. But we're talking about careers, but part of it is taking care of yourself and your families, your friends.
Definitely. So maybe just to recap a bit, while we're waiting for Dr. Taffet to join us, just to highlight some of these key points, these great points that are coming through. Hearing a lot about the importance of building professional relationships and networking, and also mentorship. Very, very useful there to have a mentor, but also to be a mentor. Taking on roles and joining things, but taking active roles, not just, sitting on the sidelines, and also really working to have a balance in life, like Dr. Reinhardt and Dr. Rosario were mentioning, just having that time to decompress, especially now that we're all working at home, right? How do we schedule some downtime? And kind of through all these themes, I'm hearing a really interesting point about kind of having a growth mindset, a leadership mindset, stepping outside the box, seeking those opportunities that are available to us. And so, yeah, very, very interesting. And just, it's great to hear all of this, just taking it all in. So another thing I would add too, and I think Dr. Reinhardt, you kind of touched on this. So I guess speaking for myself as a perspective of an early career professional, is that the GSA has been an incredible resource to support career development and growth, such as the network building and the learning opportunities and skills and leadership development. And I know recently, Kaylee and I had the opportunity to co-produce a podcast with the GSA, and just the networking there and the mentorship that we received and have been able to give to each other, and the leadership opportunities, they've really been infinite, even just leading to the career conversation today. And so, yeah, the GSA, it's just been such a fantastic resource in really nurturing and supporting our careers as early and emerging research professionals. So I guess we'll move on to the next question now. So looking forward, what do you think the future holds for the field of gerontology?
Well, I think it's very bright. I mean, certainly we are an aging society. And as I said earlier, there seems to be more of a recognition that there are older people there. I mean, just amazing how invisible older people can become and how they feel about that. So it's really crucial, and it's crucial across the globe. It's not obviously Canada, other countries. This is a huge deal, the demographic changes, but also I would say the recognition that we need science. That's been big. Like the word science is said like at least once a day, it seems, on every news channel that I have. And so you're all scientists, you're social scientists, you may be other kinds of scientists, but this is a really shining moment for people that have knowledge to bring forward to try to bring solutions for things that require solutions. So I think it's very bright, and we have them back.
Yeah, this is Zoom getting its revenge on me for all the bad things that I said about it. Sorry.
Glad to have you back, Dr. Taffet. This is fantastic.
You were in the middle of saying, do what you like, but do some things you don't like, I think you were saying.
Yeah, that's a perfect summation. And I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
For sure. For sure. You have to be prepared to, be able to take on some more difficult work as well. So I guess just to kind of catch you up here, we're just talking about looking forward and what we think the future will hold for the field of gerontology. So Dr. Rosario or Dr. Taffet, if you have anything to add.
I would agree with Susan on this, like in terms of like, when you look at the aging, how society is aging, not just here nationally, but also internationally. The future is in so many ways, the future is bright. Right, but I would also say that I think really in addition to all that was said, I think it's really going to be very important for us to also be able to like understand how this demographic change is going to have implications, in terms of the political economy, because I think what we see is like, especially like when we think about like COVID-19 and the pandemic and how that really hit different groups of people very differently, right? It was not that one group was more prone to it, quote unquote, more prone to it, but the idea is that it really had an impact on people very differently based, and I think part of it is really just getting to a better understanding of how social structures can actually have an impact on people's life experiences as well as life outcomes, and so I think in terms of the scientific growth, I think as much as it's also important to look at how individuals grow, and and to look at the biology, so to speak, of individuals, but it's also important, just as important, to be able to understand, how social structures, have an impact on individual lives, as well as how connected we are in those things, and how some of the outcomes that we see are not equally distributed, and maybe that's something that we also have to think about in terms of the implications of policies on people's lives, and how science can also help change those policies.
Definitely, for sure. Dr. Taffet?
Well, it sounds like I missed sort of the heart of the discussion, but all I'll say is that demographics, I've been looking, I think Canada right now, the number of children has really been shrinking, and Canada has had an accelerated, what do we call that, inverted pyramid, or maybe it looks like middle-aged man with the belly in the middle, and so I really think that there's that demographic change may happen more rapidly than we expect, and how COVID's going to affect that, I don't know. But there are huge opportunities, and again, it seems like many of the culture of people who are 20 or 25 years old is really not to embrace the elderly. So the market that you're competing with may be much smaller than you'd look at just by looking at the demographics of your age groups.
For sure, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting just to hear you all touch on the demographic. I know in the US alone, what are we, almost 54 million people right now are age 65 and older. And like Dr. Taffet was mentioning, in Canada here where I am, we now have more children, more older adults actually, than children. And so we see this kind of the demographic shift here for the first time in history in Canada. Yeah, so that's just really interesting. And just listening to you about not only the political economy changes that were mentioned, but the policy changes. And it's interesting that we mentioned that that came up in the discussion. I was just reading an article last night. I believe, Dr. Reinhart, you were a co-author on it, actually really highlighting and identifying the COVID-19 pandemic and the policy changes and how it's actually benefiting older adults. I believe that article was in the Journal of Gerontological Nursing. And so I'd point our readers in that direction. Really fascinating just to see some of the benefits that are actually, coming out of the pandemic in terms of the CARE Act and policy changes there.
I really like the point about diversity, both as Dr. Rosario was saying, diversity of individuals, but also diverse paths, as we're seeing here, many different paths from medicine to nursing to social work, but also paths may be created from this demographic shift. So things that may not exist now absolutely could exist in the future. And I think having, again, that resilience and growth mindset is part of maybe creating your own path and kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, maybe thinking about new avenues for assisting and learning about older adults. So really great points.
Definitely. Now let's turn it over to Patty. Any questions on the chat?
Well, we've had some comments that came in on the chat, I think just basically agreeing with many of the things that you all have been saying, that sort of that coming to the light that so many of us experienced when our careers early on, how we came to be working with older adults in the first place. And then also, as I was listening to you all, I had a question myself, so I'm going to throw it out there. One of the things that I've always loved about gerontology as a field is its interdisciplinary nature. And I feel like so many of the problems that, or not problems, but opportunities, challenges, things we have in front of us as we talk about these demographic changes are going to take different ways of thinking than maybe I was trained within a single discipline. And I love having gerontology combined with my clinical pharmacology because it brings so many different perspectives to the problems I'm interested in. When I learn what other people are doing in this field, from the sociology to the biology. And so I'm curious how you feel like gerontology has meshed with the other parts of your career identity, to help you forward your scientific career.
Well, I'm gonna wedge an answer. Maybe this isn't even relevant to your question, but I'm gonna wedge this in. When we were talking about mentoring, I think everybody was envisioning somebody who had very much taken the path that was obvious in front of them. I had a mentor who was a social worker, whose name is Nancy Wilson. Was absolutely one of the best people in looking at a problem and finding the social work solution. And then it was my job to make that social work solution meaningful to me. So Patty, I agree with you totally that there's huge advantages to having not only many skills like Susan talked about, but the ability to take many different external viewpoints and integrate them into what you do. So when you pick mentoring, I know everybody thinks, oh, I got to have a mentor who's going to be what I'm going to be when I grow up. But it's actually get somebody who you're not going to be when you grow up, and have them be a mentor. You'd be surprised how much wisdom, how much broader your foundation will be, which leads you to greater resiliency later on. Sorry, that probably didn't answer your question, but I wanted to say it because you spurred it on, and I do that.
No, it did address the question that I was posing, because it's one of the things I have absolutely loved about the field of gerontology. Those different perspectives are so readily available around me because we all care about the same population, not necessarily the same methodology or the same approach to working, but we care about the same group of people.
I thought that was a brilliant response, actually.
I did too.
I do. And, I take it even outside of mentorship to seek relationships with people that are different than you are, different by age, by race, by culture, ideology, ideas, as many differences as you can, and not just one time, as many relationships as you can, because you will think differently. I think you will become more creative, certainly more understanding. Hopefully we can just get to understanding of different points of view, and respect, of course, but also prompting innovation and collaboration. So, and I think that's true in life, not only in the field that we're talking about right now, but the more enriched you make your networks, the deeper and different you can make them, I think the healthier you become.
Yeah, those are fantastic points. It really seems like through interdisciplinary collaboration, we can really develop more robust and innovative solutions than we could achieve by a single discipline or theory or an individual. And so fantastic, fabulous points.
Yeah, and just one of the beauties of GSA is if you're at the meeting or virtually, switching to one of the things that you wouldn't have gone to. The OTs talking about driving. I remember sitting at one of those sessions and just, oh my gosh, I'm a moron in how I've been telling people not to drive. This is what I need to have been invoking. It's just fantastic. And that's probably not a great example, but there are other, sessions where you just drop in and you sit there and you're just a sponge. And it's amazing what you take out of it.
Definitely very inspirational getting to attend the GSA, learn new ideas.
So any concluding thoughts or any comments about any of the questions as we move into closing out the session today?
Kaylee, did the fourth question on the future of gerontology? Was that when my internet went out?
That is just after your internet went out, and we are more than happy to hear your response if you'd like to chime in now.
So sorry, I got to do this. So as somebody who's been taking care of old people for more than 30 years now, I think we're finally at the point where we're going to start to modify the aging process, and all of our preconceived notions of what aging is supposed to look like are going to get shaken to their roots, at least from a biological point of view, and therefore all the other points of view. So all of a sudden, the Senior Olympics, now we're going to have to say, gee, did that person take, anti-gerontologic drugs, be it senolytics or what? And when they run a mile in 4.5 minutes, we're going to have to all shake our heads. And even though they have 70 chronologic years, they may only have 50 biologic years. And we're going to really have to think about it. And, may well be at the point when it's the 120-year-old that's elbowing you out of the way in Walmart, as opposed to now when it's just the 70-year-old. I'm seriously just seeing what people are doing in animals and understanding some of the concepts that are happening. The sessions that on modifying pet longevity, so that 22-year-old dog isn't going to be that unusual anymore. I mean, I really think that for all of us, and maybe this happens every decade or every other decade, there's a fundamental change in what we're going to do that's right around the corner, and that to me is super exciting. Okay, sorry.
That is such a great point. I think the whole kind of theme that we've talked about resilience and kind of expecting the unexpected falls perfectly in line with that sentiment, and certainly things that we don't know yet, we might know in the near future. So that's wonderful. Any other concluding thoughts or comments before we move into closing?
We had one comment from the chat I'll just share, and that's that we have a lot of work ahead of us. That's a good thing. That the questions aren't all answered, and we have I think a lot to look forward to as a discipline. So thank you all for sharing those things, your ideas about that, and I think our participants today feel that too, some excitement about the future.
Well, to give our listeners today a little bit of wisdom to take with them, we'd like to ask each of our panelists to share one pearl of wisdom for students or emerging professionals. So Dr. Reinhardt, would you like to share a pearl of wisdom with us?
I don't know if it's a pearl, but it's a philosophy, I guess, and that's to be generous with your colleagues. Support one another. You'll need support, but be proactive and generous and learn what they are doing. Learn a lot. You'll never know. You can use it. I just quickly, Rosalie Kane. I mean, she's a luminary, God rest her soul, and a big award winner at GSA. I always loved reading her, what she did, got to know her very well. And she was very much into privacy. I don't know if you remember that in long-term care and privacy. And I really tried to understand what she was saying in all her research. And at the end of the day, when I was deputy commissioner, I was creating regulations for assisted living. And she was so strong on this privacy and that you needed to have a lockable room and a key. And years later, my father was in assisted living. And when they gave him a key, he cried. I'll never forget that. That's Rosalie Kane. Listening to Rosalie Kane affected my father, not to mention other people in New Jersey that got the benefit of those regulations. So just be generous and learn from one another.
Thank you so much. That is wonderful pearl of wisdom. Now, Dr. Rosario?
Yeah, I would say that I think, like as much as, like it's good to have a sense of a plan as to what you're going to be doing for your careers. I also have to acknowledge the fact that, like in addition to the hard work, perseverance, and having an aptitude for what you do, I think serendipity and connections were truly important in my academic and career, my journey to where I am. and definitely, I want to also concur and agree with Susan about the whole, about being generous, because I remember, like, as a doctoral student, when I would write to people to find out more about, like a particular idea that they have and all, initially my fear was like, oh, you're such a big, like, name in gerontology. How could I even possibly think about, like sharing the same room with you, let alone write you an email or write you an email, let alone sharing the same one of the other. But then, and the many people were very generous with their time and generous with the fact that, they would not only respond, but they sometimes share with me the articles that they were written and point me in the right direction. And I think, like, I just feel like it becomes then my responsibility and duty to just be very generous with people as well, because I think that definitely has helped me get to where I am today. Yeah.
And finally, Dr. Taffet, what pearl would you like to share with us today?
So my pearl is not so much career as personal, but I guess career as well. I really like taking the time in the patients and the clients that I take care of to try to find out who they are, why they are, and really ask how they fit into history. Just 2 seconds. We had a guy just in the hospital last week who a medical student talked to, a resident talked to, another attending physician talked to, and then I talked to. And I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Apollo 13, where they had the mock-up on the ground and they would try everything on the ground before they would tell the guys in space what to do. So this guy ran the mock-up, including shooting the freezing liquid oxygen at one side of the capsule and having the heat lamps at the other side of the capsule to simulate what was going on and all that stuff. And nobody knew. And here I am, I'm sitting there. I was ecstatic. I was in heaven for the next couple of days, having spent, instead of asking him his medical history and, all this sort of stuff, I visited with him, and it was such a positive experience, and your patients, your clients, they've done incredibly important things. I took care of the guy who gave John F. Kennedy his last meal. Nobody else knew that. And just because you sit there and ask, who are you? What are you proudest of? What have you done? You get to find out who these people are, and they are treasures. And it makes you treat them better, makes you love them more, and it leads to better outcomes. So embrace them. They are cool. They are cooler than we are. That's my pearl.
That's wonderful. I couldn't agree more. I may be speaking to the choir, but I also have the same sentiment. They are people. They are here. We are, need to listen and need to engage. And that is a wonderful round of pearls. So thank you so much for all of your points. And I think Juanita and I can work to incorporate these and into our careers as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So please join us in thanking our panelists for sharing their time, experiences, and career perspectives with us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to come together and learn from other diverse leaders in aging. And thank you also to our chat moderator, Patty, and our work group members who helped plan this career conversation. And thanks to you, our participants. And a big thank you to Gina Schoen and the GSA staff for making this career conversation a possibility.
And just a note that we'll send out a brief survey following the event for you to provide feedback and to help us in planning future career conversations. And we hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank
Bye.
you.
all.
Bye. Thank you.